Tyrone Willis had worked the closing shift at CVS every Thursday for the last 2 years. He knew the rhythm of the store like the back of his hand, the low hum of the freezers near the pharmacy, the soft beep of the register, the smell of hand sanitizer and lemon floor cleaner lingering long after the last customer left. That night was no different, except his old Honda Civic had finally given up on him. The engine had coughed, groaned, and then died in the parking lot that morning. Rather than panic, Tyrone did what he always did. He adjusted. He called his mechanic, Pete, who promised to swing by after hours with his flatbed truck. So at 10:08 p.m., after locking up and setting the alarm, Tyrone dropped his keys into his backpack and took a seat on the metal bench just outside the store. It wasn't fancy, paint chipped on the edges, bolts rusting, but it was quiet, and he was tired. He pulled out a bottle of Sprite and slouched slightly, earbuds in, playing an old-school R&B playlist to wind down. The night air was cool against his skin, and for a moment, all was peaceful. Then came the headlights. He didn't notice them at first. Not really. A police cruiser rolled slowly down the empty street, headlights brushing the parking lot. He didn't think much of it. This was a safe neighborhood, but patrols were common late at night. The cruiser passed, then came back again 5 minutes later, slower this time. Tyrone looked up as the car stopped. 2 officers stepped out, one older, hand resting on his belt, the other younger, face tight with caution. They approached. "Hey, sir," the older officer said, voice neutral but clipped. "What are you doing out here tonight?" Tyrone pulled out one earbud. "Just waiting on a tow truck. My car's dead. Mechanic said he'd be here any minute." "You work here?" the younger one asked. Tyrone nodded, gesturing to his red CVS vest and name tag. "Just got off my shift." "Got any ID?" the officer pressed. Tyrone frowned but complied. He handed over his license, explained again that he worked at this very store, even offered to unlock the building and call his manager if needed. But something shifted in their demeanor. Doubt? Distrust? It was hard to tell. The older officer clicked his radio. "Dispatch, possible 1066 outside CVS requesting backup. Individual claims he's waiting on a tow." Tyrone sat up straighter. "Wait, what's going on? I didn't do anything." "We got a call about a suspicious person loitering," the younger one said flatly. "I work here, man." "Look," Tyrone pointed to his badge. "I'm not doing anything wrong. Stand up, please," the older officer ordered. Tyrone hesitated. "Am I being arrested?" "You're being detained." A cold, hard click followed. Metal cuffs tightened around his wrists. And just like that, the bench outside CVS was no longer just a place to rest. It was the scene of a night that would change everything. Tyrone had never been in the back of a police cruiser before. The plastic seat was cold and unforgiving. His wrists ached from the handcuffs. His heart pounded against his ribs like a warning drum. He kept asking the same questions quietly, again and again. How is this happening? Why won't they listen? What did I do wrong? The officers didn't answer. As the cruiser pulled out of the parking lot, something strange caught Tyrone's eye. A woman standing across the street, phone held high, recording. She didn't say anything. She didn't interfere. But she watched, and she filmed. It wasn't until 2 hours later, after being booked and briefly held in a downtown precinct, that Tyrone was finally released with no formal charges. The officers scribbled a vague, suspicious activity, no evidence note into the file, and left him sitting on a bench inside the station, without an apology, without a ride. By the time he got home, sweaty, exhausted, and walking 6 miles, back to his apartment, his name was already trending on Twitter. The woman who filmed the incident, a college student named Alea Martinez, had uploaded the video with the caption, "This man was arrested while sitting outside the CVS he works at." He explained himself repeatedly. This is what waiting while black looks like. Justice for Tyrone. Within minutes, it took off like wildfire. News outlets picked it up. Activists and celebrities reposted it. By morning, Tyrone's name was on everyone's lips, from local talk shows to national morning programs. The footage was heartbreaking. Tyrone's calm, respectful tone, the CVS vest with his name in plain sight, the refusal of the officers to acknowledge any of it. There was no aggression, no confrontation, just assumption, escalation, and silence. CVS released a statement that afternoon confirming Tyrone was an employee in good standing and calling the situation deeply concerning. But people wanted more than concern. They wanted accountability. Protests began forming in front of the police department. A group of local students painted signs that read, "Waiting is not a crime," and "Protect Black Peace, not just Black Pain." Civil rights groups reached out, offering legal assistance. Tyrone's inbox flooded with messages of support and some hate. "I never asked to be a symbol," he told a journalist who came to his apartment. "I just wanted to get home after work. That's it." But symbols are rarely born by choice. What shocked Tyrone most was what came next. As the video continued to circulate, people began asking the same question. Who called the cops? Who made the initial 911 report that started it all? 3 days later, a local news outlet answered that question. The caller was Patricia Landry, 68, a longtime resident of the neighborhood. She told reporters she called because she felt unsafe seeing someone loitering by the store after hours. When pressed on whether she had spoken to Tyrone, noticed his CVS vest, or watched his behavior before calling, she simply said, "I didn't recognize him." No crime, no threat, just unfamiliarity. The fury reignited. "This isn't just about the police," Alea tweeted. "It's about the people who weaponize the police with a phone call." Justice for Tyrone is just the beginning, and it was. Because what no one knew, what even Tyrone himself didn't yet realize, was that this wasn't Patricia's first call like this. Not even close. Patricia Landry didn't expect to be named. When she dialed 911 that night, she thought it would be like all the other times, quick, quiet, anonymous. She believed she was doing her civic duty, as she later told a reporter in a stiff interview framed by floral drapes and her aging golden retriever asleep on the couch. "I just didn't feel safe," she repeated, her voice calm, her hands folded. "It was late. I saw a man sitting there for a while, and he didn't look like he belonged." Those words ignited a firestorm. Didn't look like he belonged. That sentence, simple and soft as it sounded, sent social media into a frenzy, because for a black man in America, those 7 words had teeth. Within hours, journalists and digital sleuths began digging into Patricia Landry's history. It wasn't hard. Several of her neighbors had long suspected she harbored quiet prejudices, and now they were ready to talk. "She called the cops on my nephew when he was playing basketball in our driveway," said Malik Johnson, a teacher, who lived 3 houses down. "Said he was making too much noise. It was 4 p.m. Another neighbor, Ana Ruiz, revealed that Patricia had once reported a Latino landscaping crew for suspicious digging while they were planting roses. "It's been going on for years," Ana said. "She has this image, white gloves, cookies at the HOA meeting, but she watches us like we're all criminals." Soon, a disturbing pattern emerged. Over the past 6 years, Patricia Landry had made 22 calls to local authorities, mostly about suspicious individuals. In 18 of those calls, the person she reported was a person of color. None of the calls led to arrests. None of them involved actual crimes. She had, it turned out, built a paper trail of paranoia, and now it was public. Meanwhile, Tyrone watched all of this unfold on the news with a strange numbness. He had become a lightning rod, his quiet. Life exploded into a national reckoning over racial bias and weaponized fear. What haunted him wasn't just Patricia's call. It was how quickly the officers had responded to it, how easily they believed her over him. "I was wearing my name. Tag," he told a local podcast host, his voice quiet but steady. "They looked at me and didn't see a worker, or a man, or even a person trying to get home. They saw a threat." That episode went viral, too. And then came the twist no one expected. While Patricia maintained she simply made a mistake, Tyrone's younger sister Jasmine, a second-year law student at Howard, wasn't satisfied with that answer. She started combing through public records and court filings. With the help of a Freedom of Information request, she uncovered something Patricia surely hoped would never see daylight. A civil lawsuit from 2003, filed by a black family who had rented a home down the street from Patricia. In the documents, They alleged ongoing harassment, false reports to police, and efforts to have their lease revoked due to racial animus. The case had been settled quietly, sealed, and now re-emerged like a ghost. Jasmine brought the file to Tyrone, her hands shaking. "She's done this before," she whispered. "She doesn't call because she's scared, Ty. She calls because she thinks she can." Tyrone stared at the documents, then at his sister. "I'm not just pressing charges anymore," he said. "I'm going after all of them. Her, the department, the system that let this happen." In that moment, the quiet CVS employee sitting on a bench became something else entirely, a man with a purpose and a cause. For a week, Tyrone avoided the cameras. Tyrone avoided the cameras. He ignored interview requests, let phone calls ring out, and barely touched his food. But the world kept knocking. Protesters gathered outside the CVS where it all began, carrying signs that read, "Justice for Tyrone," and "Waiting isn't a crime." Students marched, churches prayed, lawyers called, and finally, Tyrone answered. The moment came on a quiet Sunday afternoon. His sister Jasmine sat across from him at their mother's kitchen table, stacks of papers spread out like a battlefield, legal briefs, body cam records, civil rights case studies. Her laptop chimed with updates from a pro bono legal team in D.C. who had offered their full support. Tyrone looked up from the documents, his fingers tense around a cold glass of water. "You really think we can win this?" Jasmine didn't hesitate. "I don't think. I know. And it's not just about you anymore, Ty. It's about every person who's ever been seen as a threat for doing absolutely nothing." That night, they filed Tyrone Willis versus City of Greenridge Police Department and Patricia Landry. The lawsuit alleged racial profiling, wrongful detainment, emotional distress, and violations of civil liberties. It named both arresting officers for excessive force and unlawful detainment. It named Patricia Landry for filing a false police report based on implicit racial bias. It even included CVS, though symbolically, for failing to publicly demand accountability from the department beyond a single corporate press release. The lawsuit made headlines instantly. Civil rights organizations rallied behind it. News anchors debated it. One viral clip showed a legal analyst breaking down the footage. You can see Mr. Willis clearly showing his name tag, calmly explaining himself. There's no threat, no crime, just a man sitting. This isn't just excessive, it's systemic. But just as the momentum surged in Tyrone's favor, the city fired back. The Greenridge Police Department released edited body cam footage, spliced and cut to make Tyrone look uncooperative. Clips out of context, words trimmed mid-sentence. It was an old tactic, but still dangerous. Some conservative media outlets latched onto it, painting Tyrone as hostile and questioning his intentions that night. For a moment, the tide shifted, but then came the leak. An anonymous source from inside the department sent the uncut footage to the press, and the truth was undeniable. The video showed Tyrone's full compliance, from the moment the officers approached to when the handcuffs clicked into place. His voice never rose. His body never moved aggressively. He was, in every second, exactly what he said he was. A man, waiting to go home. Public opinion snapped back in his favor with a vengeance. Tyrone stood at a press conference the next morning, in front of the same CVS bench where it all began. "I didn't want this attention," he told the crowd. "But if it helps the next person stay safe, if it forces even one officer to think twice, then I'll take every headline and carry it with me." The bench behind him sat empty, but for the first time, it didn't feel like a symbol of pain. It felt like a place where a movement began. Bench was no longer just a bench. City workers had planned to remove it, claiming it was damaged and a site of controversy. But the people said no. A petition gained over 50,000 signatures in a week. Local artists proposed turning it into a community memorial. Even the mayor, once silent, issued a statement. "That bench represents more than an incident. It's a mirror, and it's time we look into it." So they left it there, but changed it forever. A brass plaque was installed on the backrest, etched with simple words, "In honor of Tyrone Willis, and all those who wait in peace, but are seen as a threat. May we sit without fear." The day, the plaque was revealed, a crowd gathered, not in protest this time, but in unity. Families came with folding chairs, teachers brought students. Even CVS employees, many of whom had quietly supported Tyrone from behind the counter, showed up in full uniform. Tyrone sat on the bench again, the same one where it all began. But now, he wasn't alone. He wore a gray suit and a red CVS pin on his lapel. His quiet nod to the job he once held and the life that once felt so small. Jasmine stood beside him, her arms folded with pride. She had been offered internships at civil rights firms across the country and was already being called the next Thurgood Marshall. But Tyrone? He had choices too. CVS had offered him a regional management position. Civil rights groups asked him to speak at conferences. A book deal was in the works. Even the city council wanted to appoint him to a newly formed task force on police accountability. Still, he hadn't said yes to anything yet. "I'm still deciding," he told a local journalist. "I didn't ask to become anything more than a man getting off work. But if I can use this moment to make sure no one else has to fight just to sit, then maybe that's exactly what I need to be." The lawsuit remained in motion. Settlement offers had started arriving, quiet ones, with lots of zeros and no admission of guilt. Tyrone's lawyers were weighing them, but he made it clear. It wasn't about the money, it was about change. The arresting officers were under internal investigation. Patricia Landry had issued a public apology, half-hearted and clearly coached by lawyers, but she had also resigned from her HOA board and taken down her Facebook page after weeks of pressure and community backlash. Still, the damage had been done. Her face, like Tyrone's, had become a symbol, but symbols fade. Legacies last. That evening, as the crowd thinned and the sun dipped below the trees, Tyrone remained seated on the bench, alone at last. He watched cars pass. He listened to the wind in the trees. No cuffs, no questions, just peace. For the first time since that night, Tyrone let himself breathe and smile, because sometimes the most radical act of all is simply being allowed to sit in your own skin and be seen.